'Tis the season to shine with H&M. Discover the holiday collection and find fashionable pieces for your wardrobe or for under the tree. Get inspired and dazzle with this year's glam. From tuxedo styles, bow detailed pieces, impressive prints, and more. From unforgettable looks to unforgettable gifts. With fashion finds to home decor, find it all at H&M. Treat your loved ones and yourself this season. Shop in-store or at hm.com.
COVID-19 moves fast, and now you can too. If you feel symptoms, even if they're mild, you should test fast. Test positive and at high risk for severe COVID-19? Then act fast with authorized oral treatments that can be taken at home and must be taken within 5 days from when symptoms begin. COVID-19 moves fast, and now you can too by asking your healthcare provider if an oral treatment is right for you. Learn about a treatment option at treatcv19.com. This message is sponsored by Pfizer.
Bienvenidas al podcast Dos Bold Latinas. Aquí están sus hosts, Jatna Abreu
y Josibel Madera Vialet, dos latinas feministas born in Santo Domingo y in New York.
Passionate about Latina empowerment, Spanglish,
learning, growth, and so much more.
Hola mujeres, en el día de hoy, in honor of Mother's Day, happy Mother's Day to you all. Feliz Día de las Madres. At least aquí en los Estados Unidos, obviamente. We wanted to hop on here because we have seen many new moms or expecting moms on our Instagram account that are, we kind of cater to millennials, everybody, but we've seen a lot of millennials becoming new moms. And so we wanted to take the time to just share about not only because, we want to do this, but because we have gotten some women that have reached out and kind of asked us to maybe touch on the topic of becoming a new mom and changing from not having kids to then having a kid. And then how did you balance out all of that stuff, right? Like you having a career and maybe you have a partner and then you have a new person that you are, expecting to kind of cater to and always, be attentive to. So your life changes a lot. And so we wanted to take the time, Rosie and I today, to share our own experiences about how we ourselves balanced out becoming new moms. I've done it for 5 years now. So, I know a little bit of, some things now, but I'm no expert, obviously. I feel like as mom, we always learn. We're learning things every single day. And I know that Rosie has been a mom for like 9 years now. So she also has learned a lot of things. So today we'll share a little bit about what we've learned so far and how we learned to kind of balance out, our personal lives with having kids. And we hope that you guys enjoy it and that you can get some tips out of this.
Hola, mamis, bellas. Feliz Día de las Madres aquí en los Estados Unidos. Or we're really mommies. We've been talking about being a first-time mommy here on Mother's Day when we should be taking time for ourselves, right? But that's our passion. We're a mommy 24/7. So we're excited to be here to talk about what do we do after we have our baby, right? It's like, oh my gosh, our life, we literally do feel like it turns upside down, but it is all very, very rewarding. And I say cherish every moment because they do grow up fast. I always would hear, oh, when you crecen rápido. And now being a mom for 9 years with my son, my daughter 3 years, I just feel like time doesn't stop. And also to let's start to thinking about what a blessing it is to be a mother, because that really is a blessing that God has given us the opportunity to be one, and that we are able to, just be the best that we can, because however you are a mother, that's the best that you're doing, and you are the best mom for that child because God gave you that child to be their mom. So let's get started to talk about how have we balanced our lives after being a mom, because it definitely has changed a lot. So Jana, I know that you're very organized, you have a system, and I'm very unorganized. So I would like to hear more how did you do it when your baby boy was born? We were talking about how it takes a village, but from your experience, And also you having a partner, because some of us could be single moms, but in your experience of having a partner, can you share what your support system has been?
Yes. So, funny enough, we were talking about this earlier, and right before we started recording, and I think we talked about sharing some tips with you guys about, like, okay, Rosie and I got kind of like together and said, if we could summarize the tips, like how many would there be, so that it doesn't take forever, for us to share this with you. And we kind of went into like maybe eight specific tips that we want to share with you guys. And not to say that there's a lot of other things that we have to take into consideration when we become new moms, right? Because our life really, really changes. But we're hoping that these 8 tips that we kind of consolidated, and for us specifically, that we kind of thought through and we said like, oh, these are things that we would want women to know for sure. So la pregunta que me hizo Rosy, for me, kind of changing from not having kids to becoming a new mom wasn't I don't want to say it wasn't difficult. It was difficult, but I feel like it was easier because I had someone that was able to partner with me. So I'm talking about my husband. So, I wasn't alone. We always took turns basically, and he would never let me like parent this newborn alone. So he would always it was kind of like a 50-50 thing in between the both of us. So when I'm talking about, like you get out of the hospital, you birth that little child and you go home and they're like, oh, you're now ready to go home. And I remember that I told the nurse or my doctor, like, oh, this is it. Like, you're not giving me a manual or anything. There's really not like a manual for this. It's just like, no, honey, like this, you're on your own now. And that was funny. My husband was just laughing, like, why would you ask that? Like, I don't think that's a thing. And I'm like, you don't know, like, that's hard. Like, I had my doctor taking care of me for the last, during pregnancy for the last 9 months. So she would always tell me like, kind of like what to do, what not to do. And now that I gave birth, like, oh, now we don't have, you know what I mean? Like, now that you don't have someone to tell you, like, okay, what to do next. So that's why I was like, okay, you don't have a manual for this. So I just thought that was funny. But the point is that I was lucky. I was blessed and lucky. And I've been blessed and lucky enough to have my husband that has been supporting me and that understands, that I do 50%, like whatever I do, he can do as well for this baby. And so he had always been with me, in the middle of the night when we have to get up and feed our babies, right? Like, those babies get up, I don't know, like every hour, every 2 hours, whatever it is for the first, a few months. And so he wouldn't let me do it alone. So if I had to breastfeed at the time, he would still get up with me just to ask me like, oh, do you need anything from me? And I would, sometimes I'll be like, yes or no, whatever. But when he was bottle fed, there was a point where we got him to, to just get to be fed by bottle, and so formula. And so at that point, he was a lot more involved, where he could actually, we took turns where he would be like, oh, I got it. You stay sleeping. I got the baby. So, things like that are very helpful because that the first 3 months, like you're exhausted, like you are just learning and trying to figure out and balancing out, like you're no longer taking care of yourself, right? Now you're also taking care of another human being and you are expected to make sure that person pretty much, it's a good person, right? Like grows up to be a good human being. So that's a lot of responsibility. So I feel like having that, it's true when people say it takes a village. So having my husband's support, but then also my extended family, right? Like we're going to talk about that later, but having other people in your family that also supports you, not only your husband, has been super, super helpful. So that's kind of, that's a little bit of my experience. So what has been your experience, Rosibel, or when you first became a mom?
Yeah, so I was blessed and lucky that my husband knew that he was not going to be there as much. At that time, he did work like third shift, and he knows that he was not going to be around a lot because of his job. And just some guys are like that, right? But at least he recognized that, and he said, once I have a baby, I'm going to bring my mom from my homeland, from the art. And she did come, and we were blessed that she moved in like a couple of weeks before my firstborn was born. So just saying that is like super important, that before the baby comes along, you're able to identify who's going to be your support system. It could be your mom, it could be your sister, just someone that you trust, because it's good to have it figured out before the baby comes, because after that, it's like, time just goes by fast, and things happen, and you want to be able to have, I would say, like your 911 of when you need someone by your side. So even if they're not living with you, but you know that there's someone that you could trust and will be available for you, because it is really hard to just do it on your own. And sometimes if you are like no one around that's family, there are organizations that can help you to do that. At the hospital, I know that sometimes there's even social workers there that are asking like, hey, you're going to have someone to help you, to support you. So use those resources. So that's what I'm saying. Like, it's just important, super important to know who can be part of your support system. And I know there's still good people out there that are willing to help. So you definitely use those resources when that your doctors and social workers provide to you, if you don't have anyone in your family to do so. And then that I'm going to go into like reprioritizing your life. That is definitely what you need to do to be able to balance your life after being a mommy, because it's like you could be someone that's always out and about, like Jana told me, you're always out and about, but I'm like, well, my kids are always with me, even though I'm out and about. But sometimes some of us have busy lives that are not very kid-friendly environments, right? And things that you like to do that not very kid-friendly environment. So it's time to sit down and write down, okay, what are your goals? What's important to you? And what are you going to start doing after the baby comes along? And if you need to delegate some things that you are involved with, to start delegating, because like I said, after the baby's born, it's really hard to do it. So do it before the baby's born, and or if your baby's already born, you still have time to do it. But I'm just saying that it's really important to write down what's most important to you. It's like, it's kind of like you could do a little time management grid. Like, okay, important and needs to be done. Okay, that's in the grid. Important but not needs to be done now, another grid. And then like important and not to be done right now, then that's going to be something you delegate. And when I'm saying reprioritizing your life, is because yes, you still will make yourself a priority. You still will make your partner a priority if you have one. But at the end of the day, remember that you're like, sometimes your baby is like the most important thing. Like I said, like, it's so sacred to be a mother. We're so blessed to be a mother. So definitely try to always have that at the top of your list, even though you're not used to, because then the years will go by and you're like, oh my gosh, I was always putting this at the bottom of my list that I could do it later. And then you're going to want to do it, or you're going to start reflecting, I would have done this differently. And it's okay. Like, don't beat yourself up to say I would have done this differently, because we're always going to have things that we're going to wish we would have done differently. But if we give ourselves some time to reflect, that's what I'm asking, like, reflect, reprioritize your life, because then that will make it a little bit easier for you down the road to really keep your life balanced and to feel rewarded and to have a little bit less of the mom guilt, which we all always have that mom guilt. But it's to, when we say reprioritize your life, is so that we can help to cope with that a little bit better. So Jatna, let's listen to the lady that is super organized, has a schedule, has everything on her calendar. So let's learn from Jatna, like how did you reprioritize your life? And I know Jatna has always been involved in many organizations and extra things like outside of her career, or even like, after hour stuff in her career. So díganos, ¿cómo tú lo hiciste? Y lo sigues haciendo.
I know, but I would say like everything you said is pretty accurate, right? So I think that, especially because, one of the things that we want to make sure is that like the first maybe the first 2 years are very, very important because your child is going to be very dependent on you. And you might not, also, even though you could have people to maybe stay with your kid and, and they may offer to just stay with your baby. You personally, as a new mom, you might be feeling like you don't want to do that just yet, right? Because you're not ready. That's kind of how I was, those first 2 years. Like I would have people, my sister would ask, my mother-in-law would ask, like, I can watch Debbie and you guys can do this, you guys can do that, or like he can spend the night, but I wasn't ready yet to let him stay with someone else, even though that's my family. And I know that they would take great care of him. So if you're like me, you're going to have to reprioritize even more so because, for those 2 years, you're just not going to want your kid to be with someone else unless it's absolutely necessary, right? Because if you are a working mom, which is pretty difficult, not to say that being a stay-at-home mom is not difficult. It is difficult too, but I feel like when you're away from your kids for 8 hours a day and plus whatever commitment you have afterwards, if you have, other if you're involved in the community and do other things, like it's pretty.
Or if you travel.
Oh yeah, or if you travel for sure. Thanks for that. So that
was me.
That's pretty difficult, and so you want to make sure that you have the right support to do that, and that you're prepared. So other than that, than that space, you might not want your kid, staying away, during the weekends with someone else because you may not be prepared. So when you are working and you have other priorities, you have to plan around those things, right? So the reason why we said earlier, like you need a great support system. So for me, it was making sure that I had, who I needed. So like my husband, we would take turns and making sure that, if I had a work commitment after work hours, like that he knew that he needed to, go pick up my son from like daycare or like from the grandparents so that he could take care of the baby, after work hours and like feed him and bathe him and put him to bed and all those things that need to be done. I mean, up until this day, we still do the same thing, right? He's 5, but someone still needs to take care of him, right? So we got to take turns to make sure that we are both doing our part. So like if it is his time, he has something to do after work, I know that it would be my time to make sure that, I pick him up, I feed him, I do whatever needs to be done, like our routine, our daily routines. We don't want him to lose that. We always make sure that he had that, everyday routine so that he got used to it and that never went away. So we make sure that one of us are present and that one of us takes care of him. So, just planning around those things and making sure that you're both, or whoever is taking care of your baby, right? You're all on the same page and when to ask for help and who's going to watch your kid so that you're able to better, perform as a mom, but also like as an employee or whatever it is you may be doing externally as an extracurricular activity. So I feel like, Rosie mentioned like, oh, she has a calendar for everything, but honestly, it does work. Like I can't, the one thing I always say to my husband is like, and he gets mad when I say this, but it's like, if it's not on the calendar, it's not going to happen. Because he's always like telling me like, oh, I have this thing happen. Like he would always mention something random, like on Sunday, I'm doing this. But if it's not on the calendar, like I have so many things in my mind that I'm never going to remember that he said that he was going to do something on Sunday. So unless it's on the calendar, I tell him like, unless it's on the calendar, it's not happening. So sometimes he gets mad because then I have something planned and it's on the calendar and he never mentioned, or he might have mentioned, but I forgot that he has something to do. And he gets mad because he had told me that, but then I forgot. So, those things are important. You have to make sure that, like I said, if it's not on the calendar, it's not going to happen. So make sure you have some sort of system for you and your partner so that you both know what is happening, because there's so much going on, especially like, Rosie mentioned that. Yeah, like, we're both working moms, and then I'm part of like, I'm part of an organization, like as a board member, and I also mentor a little girl. And so those things are on my calendar, right? So if I have a commitment after work that I have to go to a board meeting or there's some sort of board event or whatever it may be, I make sure that he knows, so that he knows that it's his time to take care of Jebby. It's his time to, to do whatever needs to be done during that time. So again, that's why we both, communication and having a calendar is so, so helpful, because that's the only way you're going to know, right? Like what's happening next. So, I mean, it sounds weird, but it works. I promise you that if you have a calendar for the both of you, for your family, with everybody's appointments or everybody's activities on it, I can guarantee you that things are going to be so smooth, and you're going to know, whether you have conflicting appointments, conflicting activities or whatever, or what to prioritize, right? What's a priority to go to and attend, and what is not, so that you could both make that decision. So that's kind of how it's worked for me. So I hope that's a tip. Get yourself a calendar.
Yeah. That's the homework. I always give homework at the end, and I'll repeat at the end too. That will be your action. And even if you don't have one, you can start one. And if you're able, like if you do have that spouse and you're able to do that, like me personally, I don't think a calendar would work for me, because my husband has no set hours. Sometimes he sleeps at home, sometimes he does, sometimes he's here for dinner, sometimes he's not. Like, so because I'm saying, ladies, like what do you mean he doesn't sleep at home? He's a truck driver. He's an entrepreneur. So like when he's not fixing a truck, he's doing this. But we could have a mutual calendar for like kids' activities, so that they stay in the know. So for me, like my son, he started playing soccer. So now it's like I make sure I text him like, hey, this is the time. Because what I have learned, like even though he's busy, he is starting to notice like, hey, kids are growing up fast. I need to be involved more. So it's like I do have a little calendar on my microwave, those magnetic ones, and I write down on there what is special events. So like this month we had a wedding, last month we had a wedding. So it's like and like Max's soccer games now, and other things, like there's someone's birthday. So it's like you can start small with the whole calendar thing, and then you start incrementing, because I know for me it's really hard if I start out of nowhere to be organized, but I have learned to start out with small things to make sure that we're both involved and that we're supporting each other. Because this year, guys, has really been the first year that my husband has been present at all the games, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like he's there, and it's like, oh, this feels weird. I feel like a family. I feel supported. And the kids, they also appreciate it too. So we had to be more intentional, and sometimes notice our husbands are like a kid, and that we have to train them, even though it took me a couple of years to do that, but it's okay. Which comes into I'm gonna switch a little bit the topic of like the first year. Like John and I were talking about how the first year is when the baby most needs you. So it's like, okay, sometimes everything on your calendar that doesn't have to do with work, that is just like optional, might be off your calendar. Why? Porque the first year, they're so delicate. So many things could happen, and they're just so vulnerable. They're fragile, and you really want to spend that time with them so you can bond with them. Because again, like I always grew up hearing say, "Ay, los niños crecen rápido, disfrútalo." And like at the beginning, when my son would be born, like since I would work with my parents, I would stay longer hours, and then sometimes I look back, I'm like, oh, I shouldn't have stayed that long, because I knew like my son was in good hands. But then you're like, oh my gosh, no, like he is growing up fast, and then I just started to change a little bit, and that I wouldn't even sleep with him on the recliner. But that was all because he was always on the move. But they really, I don't know, it's just like, they're used to being inside of you for 9 months, and you're the person that smooths them, que le da esa calma, que le da esa seguridad. Yes, your caregiver, your spouse could give that, but be really, really intentional to be there for your child, because that time you never get it back. Like, yeah, you're like, oh, but I'm gonna have all these years, to live with my baby, and different ages in their life. But there's just something so special, bondful of that first year. And I don't know, maybe I had to read about it more, but I honestly feel it's because they were inside of you for 9 months, so they're gonna try to get to know the real world, and it's all really weird to them. So cherish that time, and really really start to recognize why is important for you. So like when you're thinking like, oh, should I decide or not? Think about like, why is this important? Like make something intentional to yourself of what is important to you to spend more time with your baby. So I'll leave it there and let's listen to Jana. Like, why was it important to you, Jana, to that first year being with JB the most present that you can be possible?
Pretty much very accurate. Everything that you said, because again, I mean, the one thing I do want to make sure is that so I don't have like any therapist telling us, like, oh, not just the first year, but as my sister says, as a therapist, the first 5 years of your child's life are the most important ones. And we know that, right? We've talked about that before in other episodes. But for us, when we say the first year or, the first 2 years, it's more about like what Rosie said, right? Like the bonding, they're never gonna be that stage again, right? Like they're never gonna be a newborn or a baby again. And then once they're 2, 3, they're just gonna start pretty much learning about life and getting to know things and how to start being independent and just being themselves. Like they're gonna have their own little personalities, and then that's when like everything starts to change, right? Because they, like Rosie said, they start to grow up, and now Jerry was a baby and now he's 5. Like, how did that happen? Right? Like, so that's very important. So that time that you get with them to bond for that first year, I think it's really important because again, you're never going to get that stage. They're never going to go back to that stage, right? They're just going to start learning things and being their own selves, right? And we want that for them as parents. But one thing that I do want to say is like someone told me that, I can't remember who it was, but they said, and that kind of hit me. They said, hey, when your kid, because when Jebediah started kindergarten earlier this year, it was his first year in kindergarten. Like I started to kind of cry because I was like, oh my gosh, he's in kindergarten now. That's crazy. Like, how did that happen? And someone mentioned to me that, from now on, you're only going to have 18 summers with him. And that kind of hit me because I was like, what? And they're like, yeah. Every school year, from now on, for the next, 18 years, you're only going to have your kid for 18 summers. So that really hit me, And it's like, oh my gosh, like you're right. Like once they get to that point where they, when they graduate high school, they're, it's up to them, right? Like at that point, it's like whether they go to college or not, right? Like we're not going to talk about that. But like if that's what they want to do at that point, like, they're going to go off to college. They're going to do their own thing. They're going to start living on their own at that point. So it's true. Like they're only going to be under your roof if it happens to be, a kid that wants to experience and move on and have like, a college life, a different type of experience, and they just don't want to be with you anymore. You only have 18 years with them. So that really hit me. And so that's something that I want to tell you guys, that it's important to make sure that you're very present in your kid's life, regardless of, yes, first year, but the first, the time that you have them in your home and they're under your roof, you have to make sure that you cherish that time and that you spend a lot of time with them, because life does, my gosh, kids do grow up super, super fast. So that's my 2 cents. That's what I wanted to say. But we want to move on to a different topic, which we always address. I feel like we always talk about this, whatever, in all of our episodes. And even if we have like a guest, we always make sure to ask our guest to talk about this topic. And it's about self-care, because when you have a baby, like we said, life changes, right? Like just like you have a whole new human being that you have to take care of, and just life is different. Life starts becoming hectic, and it's no longer about you. So you have to make sure that you find the time to take care of yourself. So, and we've always said this, that whatever it may be, whatever self-care looks like to you, that's what we want you to do. So if one of the things that, this is just an example, if one of the things that you enjoy doing before you became a mom was to go to a lot of like events after work, or just like, those women empowerment events, or those extracurricular activities. So if those are things that you enjoyed before, and you know that you can no longer do those things because, right, you have a kid now and you have another priority, and you may not be able to go to those as frequent as you were able to before. if that's something that you like doing and that could be one of your self-care. So you can always say, I'm going to go once a month to one of those women events because that fills my cup, right? that makes me feel good. And that's kind of one of your self-care. So just make sure that whatever, again, we've touched on this a lot in a lot of our episodes, but we want to make sure that we are, you're determined, like you have determination and you actually set up the time to take care of yourself. So whatever that looks like, whether it's getting a mani and pedicure, I don't know, whatever you like. We've talked about this before. Like my sister came on board here to talk on one of our episodes, and she talked about, how to know what your type of self-care looks like. So whatever that looks like, I mean, you can go back and look and listen to that episode. We can link it on our description here. But make sure that you know what is it that self-care looks like to you, so that you always try to make sure that you have that time, because you will always put your baby first and you will always put your family first, and you need the time for yourself to take care of yourself, because if you don't take care of yourself, how are you going to be able to take care of your family? So that's what I'm just saying. In my experience, what I did the first year and I continue to do now, both myself and my husband, because I don't want to be, I'm not going to be, like greedy here and selfish to say like, oh, I'm the only one that thinks about myself. And so on my self-care, like I know that he also needs self-care. Like he works too. And he does, 50-50 in our household. So he also needs his self-care. And for him, his self-care is to go on Sundays, once baseball, he plays baseball. So once baseball season starts, every Sunday he plays baseball, and I know that that's his time and that's basically his self-care. So for him, that's how it looks like. And I allow him to get that for himself because I know it's very much needed for the both of us. And in my case, it depends, right? Depending on how I'm feeling, I like to, go out with my sister, go out with Rosie sometimes. We, to me, self-care also is, getting a mani and pedi. Sometimes I like to pamper myself. And that's, one day I'm like, okay, that's my self-care for today. So it changes for me all the time. So it's just making sure that I'm taking the time with myself on my own to do whatever it fills my cup. So we just want to make sure that you do that. And I always make sure to do that for the past 5 years and even before that, right? But it was a lot easier before, let's be honest, right? Before you have a kid, things are a lot easier. But the past 5 years, that is something that we are both on the same page, my husband and I, and we both have our days where we do our self-care. So I just want to say that. So for you, Rosie, how does that look like?
For me, it's like getting out the house, even if it's just for a drive, to listen to music, because as we said, it's important, to always be present and so forth, but so that you could take care of your baby, as they say, take care of yourself, like when the baby's born, the nurses will tell you, hey, make sure you get some sleep so you can take care of your baby and etc. And it goes back to that, because sometimes we get irritated, like, they're crying and you don't know what to do sometimes. Like for me, that's how it would be. And I would even lose my temper. Like I remember I was screaming at my little poor baby Max because he would keep crying. And then that's like some of the things that even for your self-care sometimes could be not listening to your immediate family members, because they will tell you, ay, es que ese bebé está llorando mucho porque tú lo tienes engreído, tú siempre lo tienes cargado. So it's like you get so confused. So sometimes even self-care could be not listening to everybody in your family telling you what to do, or you just leaving the house to actually read a book. Because if you do it like, oh, when the baby's sleeping, you still have in your mind everything that you have to do at home. I feel like it's like something that you need to do to get outside the house, even if it's like, doesn't have to cost money, doesn't have to take a long time, so that you feel like, oh, I missed my baby. And you're like so happy to see them again, even if you're only gone like half an hour. I don't know what that is, but like that's how it would be for me. It's like just a little break, a little moment, so that you could recharge, because it just drains you and you become irritated and you really don't want to be irritated, because then that's when you're like, oh, due to lack of sleep and etc. It's easy to be like, time is going by slow, because at the moment you feel time is going by slow, but then you're like, oh no, I want those times to be back. And then when you see a baby's born, you start getting baby fever and you're like, I want a baby again. But then you're like, oh wait, no, like it's really cute, the first couple of months, but then it's like, it's really hard. So yeah, that's why it's super important for the whole self-care thing. And yeah, we're always asking because I'm called Nosy Rosie. I'm always interested to know what other people self-care is because I love to learn about that. And you can even ask other women, like if you're stuck on knowing what self-care is, ask other women how they did it. So maybe you could figure out what works for you too. So and going into that, maybe a self-care could just be a date night with your partner if you have one, or a date night with yourself, that goes into the whole self-care thing. So, but if you do have a partner, like the dynamic really does change and like it's easy to make the baby a priority. But I like, yes, love my kids and everything. And even though I'm not the best example of whole date nights because I don't have them, but it's like I always think of the kids are going to leave the house, and then who am I going to stay living with? Sometimes we end up living with a stranger, like you don't even do anything together because everything you did involved the kids, and then like the kids move out, and you're like, oh, what am I going to do with my partner now? We don't barely even know each other. We don't enjoy each other, and then it's like, so that's why it's so important to do it, and also because you start losing connection, and that's when you start disrespecting each other. Like it's like things we overlook, because if you start analyzing yourself, you'll see that all your conversations involve your kids. So you really do want to have those date nights so that you keep it alive. And if when you're thinking about date night and you're like, oh my gosh, we're on a budget, we just had a baby, but we don't really don't want to leave the baby here at night with someone, like you could do it after the baby goes to sleep, 30 minutes. It's all about being intentional. Jana's really good with calendars, but I said, like I was telling her before we record, like I bought something to try to do something with my husband, like the whole pedicure thing. And it's like, I haven't done it. I bought it and it's sitting there in the closet. And it's like, I learned I had to put it on the calendar so we could be intentional, because with kids and life, if you're not intentional, it doesn't happen, because the kids somehow always become the priority. And you're like, oh, I'm too tired now. I prefer going to sleep. So, yeah, as long as just do something meaningful with your spouse, whatever is meaningful for you both, that's what you should start doing. If you haven't done so, or if you're going to be a new mom or have a second child, third, to make sure to be intentional with that. So I don't know, Jana, vamos a ver. Nosy Rosie's asking me like.
No, you're right. I agree. Everything you said. It's very important for if you have a partner and your partner is very involved with your, again, at home and supports you, and they're kind of like, 50-50 with you on what you do and how you take care of your child. It's super important to have that connection and to make time for the two of you, because like Rosie said, even when you have date nights, there are times that you go, like, for example, like, I'm not going to lie, like, it happens to me all the time. When we do go out for date nights, my husband and I, the first topic tends to be like, it's just the two of us, but the first topic that comes up is Jebby. Jebby has this, Jebby has that. Like, oh, did you see what Jebby brought home? Oh, did you see this? Did you see that? Like, again, everything revolves around Jebby. So it's hard, not to, like, you have to try to have a different conversation. And it's like you sit there and you're just like, I don't know what else to talk about besides my child. You know what I mean? Like, that's what we have in common now. And that has happened to me. And it's hard, but if you don't make it intentional where you're like, nope, today we're going out, we're having a date night, and it's just all about the two of us, and we're just going to have a different type of conversation and a different topic, you have to be intentional about it. Because if not, like Rosie said, your kid is just going to be the center of your life, and then you're going to lose that connection and communication. And then, it doesn't feel good when you're not connected to your partner, especially because then starts the problems, right? Like the communication portion, then, the whole, like the intimacy and all those things. Like you have to make sure that those things are also a priority for you, because at the end of the day, like Rosie said, your kids are going to leave and you're going to stay with this person. And then you're going to be like, I don't know, like, what do we do? I don't know this person anymore, after all those years of taking care of someone else or all these other kids. So make sure that you and your husband are also, or your partner, are a priority, because at the end of the day, all you have is, once your kids leave, all you have is each other, basically. So the other topic that we want to talk about is that once you have a kid or a child, a baby, things, you may not have you because you haven't done this before. You just don't know what to do. And I would be included, right? Like I didn't know, like, yeah, I prepared for pregnancy. I did all this, I attended all these trainings, all these things, that they have out there. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I did go to those, like the breastfeeding sessions, the birthing sessions. Like I did it all. I'm not gonna lie, because I had no idea what I was gonna do or what to expect or how that would work. And so I was getting ready. So I attended all those sessions. But at the end of the day, once I was going through that, like I actually birthed this child. And now, when they tell you you're on your own, there's no manual. At that point, you're like, oh, shoot, like, what am I going to do? Like, I don't know who am I going to talk to? So I think it's very, we talked about this, Rusty and I, and we think it's very important to join some sort of support group, like a mom group, someone that has already maybe, the women that have already had children that might have already gone through this, have a little more experience or have already had time to, go through that. You might want to connect with those women. You might want to join in groups of women that just had a baby, or your friends or someone, because and that have kids like closer together, like your age, like your kids' age, just because they'll be able to give you tips and support you when you're going through things. Like for me, I have like my mom, and obviously like I had family members, cousins that had kids, right? Like that were older than my baby. And so I knew that they would know things, obviously. And I sometimes would go to them to ask questions, but I felt like it was a lot easier for me to, like my cousin-in-law, they had a child too at the time that I had Jebby, and they're only 2 months apart. So I feel like I relied a lot on her because she had just 2 months prior, she had just gone through those things. So like the whole postpartum stuff, having questions about it, like, her baby was 2 months older. So there were things that she had already gone through that I was starting, Jebby was starting to go through that I didn't know how to address or what to do. So, I would go back to her and ask her like, oh, how do you do this? How do you do that? And all these things, right? So having someone that could potentially help you that has kids kind of closer to your kid's age and that had already gone through that maybe a few months before or whatever, it's super, super helpful and important because they'll be able to help you, get through that. And they'll be able to tell you, like if and validate, right? Like if what you're feeling right now is something that it's normal to feel, right? Because a lot of the things I mentioned to her, she was like, yep, I felt that too. And, she would help me and say like, oh, try this, do this. And it helped. So that's kind of my 2 cents on that and my experience. So I just make sure that you have a support, not only your family, but someone that has already gone through it, like just recently when you were going through it, because those are the people that will have a lot more information about what you're feeling than, the people that had already gone through that like years before because they have older children, right? So, yeah. So I don't know. What do you think, Rosie?
Yeah, definitely. I'm like, balancing your mental health there because it's like some of us go through postpartum depression and we don't even notice it. We don't know what we're going to. But if you don't talk it through with someone, you end up not noticing it. Like for me, when I had my daughter, I don't know why, every night at her bedtime routine, I would start crying, just bawling. And it's like, oh, you're a girl, tú vas a sufrir porque eres mujer. And it's like my sister-in-law was like, oh, esa depresión. I'm like, no, why? Like, and then it's like, so it's always good to have at least one person you could talk to, and they don't have to say anything back to you. It's just so they can listen to you because you have to let out all of your emotions and for you to keep functioning as, to do everything that you do. Like if it's after the 3 months that you're at home with your baby from work or you don't work, anything like it's super important for you to be able to have someone there for your mental health so you can keep balancing life and keep functioning to do everything that you do. So I think that just it really is into like what takes us into the as being a Latina, we feel like we always have una abuela, una tía, una mamá that's there to give us super good advice, but then also it's like make sure that you choose wisely of who you want to listen to, because sometimes it becomes overwhelming and you don't know who to listen to, and you take actions that you're like, oh, I should have not done that because it's not right. And then you feel the pressure because it's your tia, your abuela telling you to do it. So follow your heart always. And that will also help you like balance your life as being a new mommy or even second baby. Just depends. Just depends like how you really want, what choice you want to make. But just letting you know that like no one ever tells you like, oh, be prepared that you're going to be having people, giving their opinions. Be prepared to make those decisions. Huh?
Telling you what to do, basically, like because
exactly.
Because I mean, Latinos are like that, and we know that they feel like because they have so much experience, right? They've already done this before. They feel like they are, I don't know, somehow they have to tell you what to do, and sometimes it's good to take some of that information and like if it applies to you and you're like, okay, yeah, that would work for me. But if it's something that they did and it just doesn't go with your, you know what I mean, with who you are and what you want to do with your baby, then you just, okay, thank you. I'll think about it. We'll see. So that is very important to always make sure that you do whatever your gut feeling. So if that's not how you know what I mean, would do things, then yes, great that your grandma, your mom has that opinion. That is great. And like I was telling Rosie earlier, like there are things that I would reach out to my mom and my grandma and my cousins about. I have had children and that are much older, right? That I would always ask about, like, instead of taking my son to the ER, saving me an ER visit, I would call them and ask them like, hey, did you have a remedy for like, a remedy at home that I could do for this, because I don't want to take him. I don't know if it's necessary for me to take him to the ER. And I would do that, I would call them, and then sometimes like, whatever they would tell me, it would work. And I feel like comfortable doing those things, I would do it. But if I wasn't comfortable about doing those things because that's just not how I want to, like raise my child or whatever, or do to make my child feel better, then sometimes I'll be like, no, you know what? I'm just going to take him to his pediatrician or, wherever I need to go, even if it's the ER. But, it's making sure that you're always trusting yourself and your gut feeling and asking them for what you need rather than getting like opinions and like without you asking, right? Things just because they want to tell you things like, oh, do it this way, do it that way. Like, no, it's your baby. You have the right to do it your way, right? So I agree with you, Rosie. I just wanted to add that.
Yeah. No, yeah, like I was saying, it's like you don't ever be disrespectful or dismissed, because you never know when that tia, abuela, mommy is going to give you the best remedio casero, because that's the best thing of us being a Latina. I would say it's like they always know what to do when it comes down to when your baby's uncomfortable with colics, constipation, gas, not sleeping well, or but you always listen and you make what's the right choice for you. Because I only mention that because sometimes it becomes overwhelming and you lose track of how you're going to balance your life as a mommy. So we just want to put that out there. They can be prepared for that and to learn how to take it in one at a time. And then the last thing, just briefly, if life allows you and if you want to breastfeed, is make sure that you do kind of know who's going to be your support system for when you're breastfeeding or you're going to pump, because it takes up a lot of time. So we're talking about balancing life. This is a topic that I was like, oh, we should include, even though not everyone decides to do it or life just doesn't allow them to do it. Because at the end of the day, remember, Fred is best. You just have to know that, okay, who's going to be here if I decide to be pumping? Because sometimes when you're pumping, the baby wakes up and you got to get them. So I'm just going to talk about my personal experience. I really wanted to breastfeed, but I wasn't getting any milk coming out. I was told you're not going to produce milk, but I kept trying. and I started pumping, stimulating. And then I had so much that I even filled up my freezer, my mom's freezer, and was able to keep up on feeding my son just breast milk. So it's about setting a time. So I became like, spoke to the things called lactation nurse, and they told me like, set a schedule. But then again, you need to make sure you have someone that's going to support you with that, because it's super, super hard and super time consuming. So just warning you, if you haven't gone through it, if you're going to be a new mommy, that to also set a schedule for that, and make sure you know who's going to be your support system. And also for when you go back to work, to make your priority, because the day will go by, and then your supply goes down. So that's what I'm saying. Like, if you do decide that, if life allows you to do it, to make sure that you balance that also into your schedule. So yep, as I said again, fed is no matter how you feed your baby, that's the best thing. Like, I just feel like this is a really delicate topic, so I just wanted to leave it there. But yeah, it's just doing the best you can with that. So also, like, not beat yourself up, because like I said, like, I was the one that I think I just became too obsessed that I would even fall asleep pumping at night. And it's like, that's not good, So it's like, make sure you figure out what's best for you, for you first, like, so that you could take care of your baby, and then second, for your baby. So because we're blessed that we have so many different options out there on how to feed our baby with science, that is just amazing. So I don't know, Jana, you want to add anything else before we close?
No, I just wanted to say that, I love that you brought up that topic, because again, not everyone, when we talk about breastfeeding, not every woman is able to actually breastfeed their baby. And if they do, they may not be able to do it for as long as they want to as well, because, they may have, like you said, like a problem themselves, or baby may have a problem itself too, like other kind of problems, like, like acid reflux and things like that, which is kind of what happened to me and Jeb. And so I really want to say that, yes, just make sure as long as your baby's taken care of and it's being fed, and I don't think there is anything out there that says that a breastfed baby versus a formula fed baby, at the end of the day, are different. There's nothing that says that differentiates a baby that's fed, formula or breastfeeding. So don't, like Rosie said, don't beat yourself up. Just make sure your baby's fed, and everything will be okay. And that baby's gonna be, it's gonna grow up to be a great human being with nothing. It will not be missing anything. So I just didn't want to leave it out so that you understand that needs to be put into the whole balance in your life, because it's, like I said, time consuming and delicate. I was just lucky that I didn't have a full-time job, and then I had someone at home to help me that was able to do that. So it's that's just how it works, like you decide. So with that said, I just want to say, as you heard, everything that we spoke about involves asking for help. I know that for some of us, it's hard to ask for help. And sometimes, like, our ego doesn't allow us, that we could do it all, that we don't need anyone. But again, you need to be in a good place mentally and physically yourself, so you can be the best version of yourself for your baby, of however you decide that to be. All of that is going to include asking someone for help, even if it's, you don't want to bother your family members, you want to go through a outside organization support system, go ahead and do it. Just as long as you have someone there that you can ask for help. And second is, making yourself a priority to be able to take care of your baby. Again, I said it right now, almost, I'll repeat it again, because as Latinas, we're so used to putting everyone else before us. Like, I always grew up seeing my mom, she was the last one to eat. She was the last one to do everything. And it's like, I kind of grew up with that mentality. And it's like, wait, what about me? Like, take that time to even get pretty on one day just to sit in your living room with your baby. So you don't forget about that, because that would be me. It's like, oh my gosh, like, what happened to me? And it still happens as the years go by, because you're like, oh,
my baby's all cute, but then what about yourself, you know? And then also, of course, making time for your partner, for each other. And after all of that, you know, making your baby a priority, because they do grow up super fast. Like even at the beginning, even though time may seem slow because of lack of sleep and everything going on, they do grow up super fast. So cherish them. Start, you know, just embrace that being a mommy, since it's truly a blessing that you're able to be one. And as the homework, mujeres, is, as we mentioned before, is make a mutual calendar with the person that's helping you, your partner, or anyone else that's the caregiver for you, so that you have a great communication process, and also helps very much with logistics. So Feliz Dia de las Madres to all those super poderosas mommies out there. Super proud of you for grinding it every single day and for leading the next generation of this world. So thank you y hasta la próxima.